Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today for the brand new episode on YouTube. While you're here, quickly, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss new episodes that come out on Fridays. I'm super excited today because we have a very special guest with us, Fiona Douglas-Crompton, who is the president and CEO, that's the part I mess up, the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. And we are going to dive into a really wonderful conversation about the heart, mind, well-being. Welcome, Fiona. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I love to talk about this stuff. So thanks for asking.
Oh, it's just, especially right now, the importance of social emotional learning
Yeah.
is such a big conversation that needs to happen, but we are pushing a lot of that aside to deal with some other pressing matters, trying to get organized, and the children are really needing this support right now. So I thought it would be so wonderful to have you on to talk about what you do and how does it serve our community and how can people reach out. So we'll just start one at a time, and if you could just dive in a little bit and tell me about the center.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about the center. We just actually celebrated our 15th anniversary. So the Dalai Lama Center started back in 2005, and it started because our co-founder, Victor Chan, has known the Dalai Lama and written books with him, and he's known him for almost 50 years. And he invited him to come to Vancouver and speak. And this was 2004. And the main purpose of his talk and what his main message was when he was here was that we need to balance education of the mind with education of the heart, and that we don't necessarily do a great job of that in North America. And so that was his purpose. How can we educate the hearts of children? And at the end of that visit, Victor asked him, would you consider co-founding a center here in Vancouver where we can explore that very question? And surprisingly, he said yes, because the Dalai Lama doesn't often, co-found centers and do that. And there's very few organizations in existence today that have that sort of connection to him. So we were given this amazing mandate, and what do you do? How do you start to educate the hearts of children? So the organization had to go through all of this discovery around how would we do this? And should we build a big center, or, what should we do? But two things they decided right away with the organization is, one, that it was very important to His Holiness that our organization was not religious in any way.
And I think that's really important for people that are watching, for them to know that this what you get when you go to their website is not religious.
Yeah. So it's purposefully to have the biggest reach possible. We wanted to make sure that the organization was completely secular, no religious or political ties whatsoever. That was very important to the Dalai Lama because he wanted it to reach as many people as possible, and because he's just that type of leader. He's very inclusive. And so that's one really important thing. The other thing that they decided in the first few years of the organization was that it's actually much more effective for us to not work directly with children. And so people often assume that we do all sorts of programming with children. And it was decided not to do that because when you're talking about social and emotional development, we know from research that it's actually more effective. If you're going to teach a child compassion, as an example, it's much more effective for you to do it as their parent, or for their teacher to do it. Someone who already has a strong existing relationship with them should be doing this with them. It's much more effective than for us to do it as a stranger. So you can imagine it would be odd, drop your child off at the Dalai Lama Center to have their heart educated, and we'll pick them up at 5. It wouldn't work as well.
Yeah.
And the other great thing about that is it makes us capacity builders. We're able to build capacity in the community, and we're able to have an exponential impact. If we work directly with children, we'd reach a few hundred kids a year, and none of the adults in their lives. Yeah. But because we work with the adults, then they get to benefit as well. And as a result, we reach hundreds of thousands of kids.
It's fantastic. You know, the interesting thing about creating that capacity and having that reach. I mean, I do work with kids, so I come at it from the other end. So there's people coming at it from both ends, and it is a much smaller, a smaller conversation when you're talking to the children directly. And you know, I have had kids, parents message me and said, my child came home and taught me X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And then that, you know, that parent can go to your website and get your website, for example, and go get that parental education that is so desperately needed right now. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, every single parent is the best parent for their child. So when we start with that and know that most of them want to do a good job, most of them want to guide their children through this, you know, childhood time, which is up and down and sideways, as is the rest of life. But, you know, there is that old saying that says the longest distance in the world is from the head to the heart. And every time I think about that, I get goosebumps all over my body, because when something is so true, sometimes your body feels it too. And it's this universal truth. And the challenge, and the premise of the work you do is balancing the education of the mind and the heart. And what I really appreciate about the work that you do is that you make it accessible, for one, but then you also help the busy parent get it in little bite-sized pieces as well. Like, I think that's really important. I think that we're going to talk a little bit about some of the offerings you have, but can we talk a little bit about the 5 qualities of the heart, mind, well-being, because I think they're so important.
Yeah, it was really important when we had this big idea of educating the heart. Well, you have to have a way to define that. You know, what is educating the heart? So we needed a framework. So everything we do is evidence informed. So we partnered with UBC. There's a particular department at UBC called the Human Early Learning Partnership, or HELP for short. And we partnered with them, and their director at the time, who has since passed away, his name was Clyde Hertzman, amazing guy, and came up with this idea that we could develop a framework for what we mean by educating the heart. And that framework was called Heartmind Wellbeing. And it's based on some work that's been done in schools, the early development instrument that's been done for years. So it's got a really solid foundation. We didn't just come up with it out of the air or have a focus group to decide on it. It really has a lot of evidence behind it. But we knew that it had to be very simple and accessible, the kind of thing you could put up on your fridge, you could put up in your kindergarten class, and everybody could understand what we're talking about. And so we have this heart, and we have these 5 key areas in the heart, in which those are the areas that we're trying to nurture with kids. And so the 5 areas are: we want children to be secure and calm, to be alert and engaged, to get along with others, to solve problems peacefully, and to be compassionate and kind. And it really does cover not only all of the basic social and emotional aspects of children's lives that are really important, but to me, it's also the foundation of leadership.
Absolutely. Because we are building the leaders of the future, and you have a really interesting path to how you came to do this work. And can you share a little bit about that? Because we've talked about it offline, but I think it's really cool for people to know, when you're doing the job that you do, which is so vital in the role of families and in the roles of parents and children, that, like, tell us a little bit about Fiona's journey.
Yeah. Well, it's quite circuitous. You know, I've been to lots of leadership things where there's young women, especially, and young men asking, like, what was your plan? And, you know, how did you plan out your career path? Well, a lot of us, and a lot of people that I know who are in their 50s and 60s now in their careers and well established, you know, it all makes sense when you look backwards, but not so much from the beginning.
Yes, 100%. We need to quote you on that.
Yeah. It all makes sense when you look backwards. So from you know, coming out, you know, studying at university and just studying languages because I loved them and had no idea what I was going to do with them, So I came out with a BA in Spanish, and what do you do with that? I ended up getting I was bilingual in French as well, so I ended up getting a job with the government that was bilingual, and I ended up becoming an investigator with the government, and I was, for the last 8 years of my career there, a gambling investigator.
Wow.
Which sounds really exciting.
So exciting. It makes me feel like, are we going to be watching a little Ocean's 11 clip or something?
Yeah,
but anyway.
it sounds like Ocean's 11, but
yes.
a lot of it was, bingo halls in Northern Ontario. So
no Brad Pitt, no George Clooney, no.
No, it wasn't that glamorous. But anyway, I learned there that, I could do the job well, but I wanted to work with people, not to be in conflict with them.
Yes.
And so when we decided for lifestyle to move from Toronto to Vancouver, and we ended up in Deep Cove, and we've been here for 23 years, that was the best move of our lives. And that was really about prioritizing, not, what's a good job, stability, money. I could have stayed with the government and just moved up.
Yeah.
But I recognized that it was more important to live within my values. And it was much more important for me to do that than to have that stability and that money and that just working my way up the ladder. So we literally quit our jobs and sold our house and got on a plane with our 2-year-old.
Amazing.
And it was the best thing we ever did.
Yeah.
And we've lived in Deep Cove ever since.
Yeah.
And I went back to work in 2004. And my first job back, I went and worked for the Board of Trade. And that was a great place for me to land because of the ability to meet so many people, to network, to really build my network. And then I got into a leadership role, and I started to become a student of leadership. And I was fascinated by what's good leadership look like, and what does bad leadership look like, and what do I want to emulate, and what do I not want to emulate. And then I got the opportunity after leaving the Board of Trade. I worked with Janet Austin at the Y and got very inspired about charitable work and what that really can be.
Yes.
And I ended up getting the opportunity to be the CEO of the Minerva Foundation for a couple of years. And that's an organization solely focused on leadership. That was a great education. Yeah. And coming here to the Dalai Lama Center, you might think it's a little bit different, but to me, it's now digging down into the roots of leadership.
Yes.
And how they start with a child. Because if you look at those 5 areas of heart, mind, well-being, those are all leadership qualities. They're just not in grown-up, corporate speak, but they are all leadership qualities.
And the idea of growing leaders, and the idea as parents, I mean, we know, I have a 16-year-old and a nearly 13-year-old, and it's more important now than ever before that we teach our children how to be, leaders of their own being, first and foremost, and to find that security and safety and how to get that inside themselves, and how to, be alert and engage with these thoughts. I mean, that's a lot of the work I do, is the inner work. Yeah. And how that, creates compassion and kindness and problem solving, and being able to look at ideas and opinions through the concept of leadership, which is intellect, not emotion. And being able to separate what, when we're digging for information, what's intellect, what's emotion, and when your emotion gets involved, how do you manage that? And you're, giving these tools to parents, and then on to children, where they can really understand what leadership means, because we see leadership and the ideas that we've took, democracy, all these sorts of things that are really being challenged at the moment, and big conversations happening about those 5 areas of building a leader. And it's just fascinating, and such important work that is there. And when I think about those 5 qualities of heart, mind, well-being, they, as parents, we're the leaders of our households. And so if we lead with those qualities and role model them for our, little people, mine are actually not so little anymore, but the people we birthed or brought into this world or take care of, it goes to, they automatically pick up a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And it's just, so this is for those parents that are saying, well, I don't know what to do. Well, there's resources for you. And like I mentioned earlier, you do them in digestible formats. And can you talk a little bit about, I'm not sure when you, the viewer, are going to be watching this video, but their website is always up to date, so you can always get the information on upcoming courses. But at the time of the recording, what do we have that's coming up where people can engage and gain some education?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd love to talk a little bit more about Heartmind Online, which is our free online resource. We developed this so that people could have, both parents and educators could have access to sort of multifaceted online resources that were very easy to understand. And they might have a video, they might have a book you can read, they might have a children's book, they might have questions or activities you can do with your children, but they're usually quite multifaceted, and they're all the resources are evidence informed. And with every single one of them, you can go right back to the research or the publication. And so they're much fuller than a lot of, it's just not curated cute content. It's actually takes us quite a bit of time to produce these resources, and it's always free. It's on heartmindonline.org.
And I'm going to link to that below the video. So if you're watching, don't worry, I'm going to have the link.
So that's always available. And, during COVID times, which we're in right now, we immediately pivoted to produce things that I'm really proud of, things that are really resonating and relevant and needed for parents and families and for educators during these times. Things like activities out in nature that are so important, sensory activities for children, creating connection in complex times, all sorts of amazing stuff that was highly relevant and needed. But we also do workshops. So, based on this framework, we do a foundational workshop that tells you all about heart-mind well-being. What is it? Why is it so important? And how can I nurture that in the children in my life, whether I'm a grandparent or a nanny or an early childhood educator or a high school teacher or a parent. How can I nurture heart-mind well-being? How can I understand it, get it for myself, and nurture it for children and youth that I have in my life? So we have these workshops. Normally we would do them in person, but of course right now we're doing them virtually. There's a foundational one. And then there's also one that I think might be very interesting to your audience, and that's the Caring for You workshop, because we know how important it is for you to take care of yourself first. We know about the stress contagion and about, how important it is for us to take care of ourselves if we want our children to be secure and calm, and we're running around like a chicken with our head cut off. That's going to be harder for us to help them. It
is, and people sometimes get confused with that idea. They get confused and think it means me first, but it actually means me too. And, having that understanding that you get to be on the board, you get to be on the calendar. You need to do that in order to fully and properly role model for your children, because no matter what you think, even if, I'm a mom of boys, for example. And, there's one time I remember saying something and I said, because I don't want you to be like me. And I remember my son so upset. And I said, what happened? What did I say? He says, Mom, don't you realize I want to be just like you? Aww. And in that moment, it caught me off guard, because my heart, I was just thinking, wow, I never expected to be loved like that, even though, I knew they loved me, but that feeling. But at the same time, it reminded me of these subtle things we say and do. They are on everything. We think, oh, it's just a slight, I don't want you to be like me. And they think, you don't understand. You are the leader of my life. Why wouldn't I want to be like you? So we take the opportunity to take these courses and classes and better ourselves. We need it. We deserve it. But also, if you feel like that doesn't motivate you, then do it for your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And these workshops have become really, really popular. We have hosted them in-house for people individually to just come, but we've also done them in organizations. So like a family resource center will have their staff take our workshops.
Fantastic.
We do them at the Y for the single mom support group and things like that. So we do them in organizations, but we also do them for individuals. Now, we're now offering them virtually so anybody can come. And we have the foundational workshop is actually coming up on October 5th. 10 to 12.
Yeah.
And then we also have the Caring for You workshop, which is on October 28th. And then the other one that's really relevant, I think, as well, is we do one that is specifically for parents and caregivers. So you could either choose to go to the foundational workshop, or you could go to the one that's for parents and caregivers. And that's October 14th. So the 5th, the 14th, and the 28th are all upcoming workshops. And then we've got a couple of others, like specific ones on a focus on adolescence. There's one that's particularly focusing on adolescence. That's November 18th, and a secure and calm workshop on November 25th.
Incredible.
So all of those, you can find out about them. Best way to do it is to sign up for our newsletter. Just go to DalaiLamaCenter.org and you can sign up for our newsletter. We've got about 12,000 people on our newsletter and a lot of people on social media. So we would love to have you join that as well. A big community on social media.
That is all about building our community. So, you know, I'm going to share those links below, but at the end of the day, you have your, you as the viewer have your community too. So you can get a group of friends together and do this together. And especially right now, there's so much isolation and loneliness. Why not go sign up for a class with a friend and do it online and connect and be able to have some conversation about it? You know, there's that old saying that says, you know, what is it? 3 levels of conversation. You can either talk about other people, you can talk about events, or you can talk about ideas. And I love this type of education because you get to talk about ideas and then you can apply them in your life. And it just gives you this maximum benefit and opportunity for growth, and for you to reduce that distance between your heart and mind and connect the two, because it's just fantastic to be able to have that growth, and everybody deserves it.
And this work is just so important now. I mean, the meaning, there's always been a certain number of people who get what we're doing and who understand it and who are behind it. But I think more now than ever, so many people are realizing the importance of their social and emotional lives and their mental health. And what we do is basically preventative mental health, you know, which people don't often think of it that way, but that's really what it is.
Well, I look at these things as from the concept of nutrition, right? Like we pay attention to the nutrition for our bodies, but we also need to pay attention to how we, you know, and nurture and nourish our minds, you know, the information we intake, and then how we communicate. All of this is this conversation about nourishment, and it's important to nourish that part of ourselves, which we didn't really talk about when you and I were growing up, but now we're really blessed to have this conversation be much more of an open dialogue. So there's this opportunity to understand why, you know, I have a perspective on this, but why do you think it's, you know, what comes first, you know, this getting good grades or the SEL? So, you know, which and why?
Well, and that honestly, that is the message that I feel like I'm out there trying to give all the time. If I could just say one thing to people, it's that, you know, we don't often think about it and reflect on it, but we are, as a society, we're very trained as parents and as students, when we were students, to focus on academics as the main measure of our success. It's the main measure of our success when we were students, and the main measure for our success for our children. Yes. And once we get into adulthood, out of school, our main measures of success are title and money. And none of those measures have really been serving us that well. And I think that's pretty obvious that we need some new measures of success.
We really do. 100%.
And so, you know, because we're so trained to, you know, well, how is Johnny doing? Oh, he's getting 89. He's going to get into UBC. And assuming that Johnny must be doing really well because he's getting 89 or 92 or whatever it is, maybe Johnny's not doing well. Yes. And maybe that isn't the only measure of success we should look at. And so the research that I found so fascinating when I got into this work is that We know from research that if you focus on social and emotional development first in your children, it actually increases academic achievement by 11 to 17%.
It's massive.
Yeah, and it also increases physical health and mental health. So instead of looking at social emotional development as a nice to have off the side of your desk if you have time, instead it should be incorporated and be the foundation for everything right from birth.
Yeah, it's a must-have.
And it lifts all boats.
Yeah, it's an absolute must-have. If you think about, you know, even if you get into the philosophy of good grades, at the end of the day, if you start with SEL as your foundation, you can teach your child, the reason you want to have good grades or you aim for good grades is actually so you have personal choice and personal freedom, which is mental clarity. So you're clear enough to be able to make the next best choice for you. So even anything, so you can still tie the idea and concept of good grades, if that's important to you as a parent, and build it on the foundation of SEL, because it matters, because then they take ownership of it as well. So as a parent, you can go and tell your kid to do their homework forever and ever and ever. At the end of the day, they need to engage and they need to see the value of that effort and energy it takes to get that grade. And it can't be done for you. It needs to come from their internal desire for that. And the way that you can shift that is talking about good grades are actually not about good grades. It's about personal choice. Being able to choose which university or which city you want to live in, being able to choose which job you'd like to have, or which friendships and relationships you'd like to have in your life. But that comes from a strong center, a strong SEL foundation, and everything builds on that. I teach the importance of self-image. The core of my work focuses in and around that. And the best way I can describe it to people is thinking about building a home with a cracked foundation. You can go and build this big, beautiful tower that's worth $5-10 million. But what happens when the quake comes? Is it going to withstand the pushes and pulls you're going to experience in your life? So what are you building? I get goosebumps all over my body when I talk about it. So when you're building the foundation of your life, it's SEL.
Yeah.
It's that, and then all your great successes and achievements are solid, because the reality of life is it's ebbs and flows. You have good, you have bad, but you need to be able to weather both.
Yeah, resilience, absolutely. And about understanding that you are not your job. There's lots of people who say, well, if I'm not the VP of blah, 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 who am I? If my company goes under and I'm the CEO, what am I? Who am I?
Yes.
And that's what SEL does for us, is it provides that balance and that resilience,
Yes.
and that sense of values. And we can weather those storms, and we can change jobs, and we can uproot ourselves, and we can recreate ourselves and go into retirement and not worry about, well, if I'm not that, who am I? I don't have anything else.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's really important. This is the next generation of compassionate leaders that we're building. And boy, do we need them to be compassionate, because
We really do.
Incredibly complex times. We have handed our kids some incredibly complex problems to deal with, and they're not going to be able to do it just by getting 98 in math.
Not at all. There's just no way. The interesting it's an interesting conversation, and it's one that comes back to the idea of taking responsibility for the self. And some of the SEL work for parents is taking responsibility for ourselves and letting go of the idea of the victim story. I mean, it's moving from victim into acceptance into victor, and it's a journey, right? Longest journey in the world, and it is so worth it. And what I really hope that you gain from this conversation that Fiona and I are having is that you can pick this up at any point in your life.
Absolutely. And you're such a great inspiration around this, because you've worked so hard on going from where you were to where you are now. And it's such an inspiring example of how you don't have to just take what you're handed and go in the same direction as everybody else has gone with what they were handed. I mean, the people to me who are able to, and I know several of them in my life who have had difficult beginnings for many reasons and difficult circumstances, and have been able to have the resilience and the ability and the social awareness to say, you know what, I don't have to repeat that. I'm actually going to go over here.
Yes.
And do things differently. And those are the people that I admire so much. So thank you for all the work that you do, Ranbir, because you're modeling this for people who might say, you know, it's too hard.
Yeah.
I've
No,
had
thank
such a
you.
tough
I'm holding back the tears.
No, I really want, I really want to shout out to you for that, because it's hard enough when you have had an easy start.
Yeah.
And you're right, you can do it at any time. And you know, this stuff is here for you anytime you want it.
Yeah.
And it's brought so much meaning to my life to be able to learn about this stuff.
Yes.
And to be able to have it, to help nurture it in the world.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you and the work that you're doing, because I feel that there are a good group of us that are focused on this from the right perspective and the right sort of motivation. And you talked a little bit about my journey, and what I have to say about that is, if I can do this, anybody can do this. So what it requires is first and foremost the desire. Yeah. So if there's even a 1 or 2 or 5 or 10% of you of you as your being that is listening to this conversation, and you feel like, yes, I'd like to try that, then don't wait, follow through, click on the links below the video, go check out the free resources that are available for you. But don't stop at just reading. Don't just read them. Try to apply them. And I can guarantee you with certainty that you're going to fail when you first try to apply them. Along the way, you're going to fall, you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes. And the challenge then comes to say, are you committed? Because any habit, you know, we always think we're starting and making a new habit. Actually, you're swapping. So if you think about habit as swapping one sort of behavior for another, then you realize it's not new. You're just doing trade. You're trading up like you would trade up a car. Mm-hmm. So as you're doing your trade, you're going to have bumps in the road to make sure that when you hit a wall or you hit some discomfort, keep working through it, because that's the story of life, no?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's absolutely true that, you know, we have to keep trying, and we have to keep going, and we have to be brave enough to fail forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're marketed the idea that you should just be able to put stuff up on your fridge, put it up on your vision board, and that's all you have to do. And you literally have to roll up your sleeves. It's like the old saying, I don't know who said it, maybe Zig Ziglar or somebody, it's like bathing. You gotta do it every day.
Yeah. 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 And I love the concept that you talked about, you know, that sort of the nutrition for our bodies and nutrition for our minds and hearts. And it's like, you start to think about, well, how much junk food do we put in our minds?
So like we're not monitoring it. Yeah. As we should. So when I first gave my kids their digital devices when they were little, I actually just said to them, this is your junkie time. And on their iPhones right now, even at 16 and 13, they have a tab called, like a little group that says junkie games. And so I don't say you shouldn't have junkie time, have it. Like you would have a bowl of chips, or you would have, you know, whatever, you know, treat. You know, rather than cheat. It's not cheating. It's just a junky thing. It's not a nutritious thing. So, but just enjoy it while you're playing it. And same goes with this. When you're consuming information, look at your plate. Like, what are you consuming? And if you can include a little bit of protein in there with some of this SAL stuff, you're going to make good muscles, no? Mm-hmm. Right? So, absolutely. Yeah. And, we have another great local author, Dr. Shimi Kang. She's been on the YouTube channel. She talks a lot. She just published a new book about the tech diet. And I was really thrilled because I had just done that kind of as a joke, and my friends' kids all call it junkie time now too, because we used it at our house and it kind of just spread like that. But it's allowing yourself to have junkie time, but making sure most of your meal is clean.
Well, it's so funny that you bring this up because during the COVID time, we realized that we needed a place for people to be able to connect with experts directly, like what we're doing right now, but slightly different. We called it Heartmind Live, and basically did a live event with 3 experts on a particular topic.
Yes.
And the first one we did was back in June, just when everybody had to go back to school for 3 weeks.
Yes.
We had 900 people register for that.
Incredible.
And so obviously we thought, okay, well, this is something people need. So we've decided to continue it as a series. And we did another one again that was about fostering connection and belonging as we go back into school in September.
Yeah.
And that was more for people who are in the education field. And we had hundreds of people again come to that one. And we're planning on doing another one, which is, we don't have all the panelists completely confirmed, but it'll be November or early December, hopefully. And it's going to be about our children and their digital world right now. We did a conference a couple of years ago called Human Connection in a Digital World. Yes. And that was really resonating with people at the time. But I think even more so, it's time to revisit that because it's in a totally different place. There's so many kids who are addicted to video games, who are opting out of this reality.
Yes.
You know, and so stay tuned for that.
I can't wait. And I'll share that just make sure I get a copy, and I will share that when it comes out. So you and I could talk for days. For days on end, because when you, like I said, when you're talking about, those 3 levels, you could talk about people, you can talk about events, or you can talk about ideas. And that talking about ideas is literally what gets me up in the morning every single day. I did used to live in the other 2 categories. Don't get me wrong. That's been part of my personal transformation and my journey. And I do have to work at my SEL every day. I joke that my morning routine is my MMA, my motivation, my movement, my meditation. And I have a book called Aligned, where I do a lot of my forward movement stuff and my deep gratitude work. And it takes a little bit of effort, but you just have to do a little bit every day, and you'll start to see the compound interest of that.
I agree. Absolutely. And it gives you so much more joy than the other kinds of things you could be investing in.
I was fully bought into the idea that marketing had sold me, that it was all about money and achievement and success and title. And especially growing up the way I grew up, being a female, being colored, all that kind of stuff. I just assumed that would get me something that I was craving deep inside of me, but it didn't. And if somebody had told me that this level of peace and clarity could exist in my mind, I would have called them a liar. If that's not a real thing. And it seems so far-fetched to me. But like I said, if I can do this, I know anyone can. And I hope you have used, gained something from this conversation. But more importantly, what I would like for you to do is go to the comments below, share some of the stuff, maybe your journey, how you've grown your heart, mind connection and well-being. But also don't forget to go check out the resources. They're there for you. So, take action, go follow through. Fiona, thank you so from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for sharing and doing the work that you do. It's so needed. Thank you.
It's so great that you're out there too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Share it on your social media. We need to get people to these resources. So do your part and be part of the community. Thank you so much.